The rain had stopped about an hour before I pulled into the parking lot of the Magnolia Grove Country Club, and the asphalt was still slick under the late afternoon sun, throwing back light in a way that made me squint. I sat there for a minute with my hands on the steering wheel, listening to the engine tick as it cooled, watching women in pastel dresses click their way up the stone path toward the entrance, holding their heels in one hand and their clutch purses in the other. I had been driving for 9 hours straight from a base in Norfolk, and my back ached in 3 different places. I hadn't eaten anything since a granola bar somewhere outside of Fayetteville, but I had promised my baby sister Hadley I would be there, and I was not going to be the one who broke that promise. She had called me 3 weeks earlier, voice thin and a little nervous over a bad connection, asking if I could please come to her engagement dinner. Not the wedding, she said quickly, because she knew I might say no to that. Just the dinner, just a couple of hours. She wanted me there. She wanted me to meet Pierce. She wanted to introduce her big sister to the man she was going to marry. And I said yes before she even finished the sentence, because Hadley was the only one in that family who had ever bothered to keep calling me after I left for the Naval Academy at 18. I sat in that car for another 5 minutes telling myself it would be fine. I had on a simple gray dress, nothing fancy, and small pearl earrings my grandmother left me. I had put my hair up in a low twist. I looked, I thought, like any other guest. No one needed to know anything about my work. I had not seen most of my relatives in 9 years, and the ones I had seen in passing. At a Christmas I should have skipped, at a funeral I could not. I locked the car and walked toward the building. The hostess inside checked my name against a list on a small leather folder. She smiled and pointed me down a long hallway with tall windows on one side and wallpaper the color of a dried rose on the other. I could hear the murmur of voices and the clink of glasses before I rounded the corner. The room was bigger than I expected, with a high ceiling and a chandelier the size of a small car, and maybe 60 or 70 people already inside, holding drinks, laughing the kind of laugh that comes from knowing you belong somewhere. I spotted Hadley right away. She was standing near a tall man with sandy hair and a careful, kind face, and she was wearing a soft blue dress that made her look about 19, even though she was 26. Her face lit up when she saw me, and she lifted up onto her toes and waved both hands like a kid at an airport. I made it about 10 steps before my father stepped between us. He was older than I remembered. His hair had gone almost completely white at the temples, and the skin under his jaw had loosened a little, the way it does on men who have been angry for a long time. But his eyes were the same, pale, flat, the color of cold tea. He looked at me the way you would look at a stain on a rug you had been trying to ignore. "What are you doing here?" he said. Not a question. A statement. He kept his voice low, but it carried. I felt my chest tighten, and then, somewhere underneath that, the old training kicked in. Breathe. Center. Don't react. "Hadley invited me," I said. "Hadley made a mistake." I could see my sister over his shoulder, frozen, her hand half raised, the smile dropping off her face like something heavy. "This is her dinner," I said. "If she wants me here, that's her call." He took a step closer. I could smell the bourbon on him already, and we were not even into the toast yet. "This is a respectable evening," he said. "These are respectable people. The Coltons are an old family. They invited their important friends, their important relatives. You are neither." There was a woman near him, my stepmother, in a green silk dress with a gold cuff bracelet that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage. She did not look at me. She looked at the wall just past my shoulder, the way you look past a homeless person at a stoplight. I had only ever met her 4 or 5 times. She had been with my father for almost 12 years. She had never once said my name. "Dad?" I said. "I drove 9 hours. "Then drive 9 more," he said. "Or get a hotel. I don't care. But you are not staying here. You are not embarrassing this family. You are not making this about you. Not tonight." I looked at Hadley. She was crying, quietly, the way she had always cried since she was little, with her shoulders very still and her chin tucked. Like if she just kept her body steady, the tears would not count. Pierce, the man next to her, had his hand on her lower back, and was looking back and forth between us with an expression I could not quite read. "I'm not making this about me," I said. I came to support my sister. You came, my father said, because you can't stand the idea of one of us being happy without you. You always have to walk in and make yourself the story. Well, not tonight. Not in front of these people. Go. I felt something in my throat close up. Now, here is the thing I want you to understand, because I think this is the part most people get wrong when they tell stories like this. I did not stand there and argue with him. I did not raise my voice. I did not say, "Do you know who I am?" I did not say, "Do you know what I do?" I had spent half my life learning how to swallow that exact sentence. In the Navy, you do not announce yourself. You do not say your rank in a room unless it is necessary. You let the work speak. You let the uniform speak when the uniform is on. And the uniform was not on. I was a woman in a gray dress with pearl earrings and tired eyes, and my father was telling me to leave my sister's engagement dinner. I nodded once. I turned. I started walking back toward the door. I made it maybe 6 steps before I felt a hand on my sleeve. It was light, almost apologetic, but it stopped me cold, because I do not let people touch me without permission, and I had not heard him come up behind me. I turned, and it was Pierce, the groom, Hadley's fiancé. Up close, he was younger than I had thought. Maybe 28, 29. He had a small scar on his chin and a cleanly trimmed beard, and he was looking at me with an intensity that did not match a man who had been introduced to me 30 seconds earlier and was now stopping me from leaving. "Ma'am," he said. "Quiet, careful. Could you give me 1 moment, please?" I looked at him. He was searching my face like he was trying to confirm something. "I'm sorry," he said. "This is going to sound strange. Could I see your left hand?" I did not know what he meant for a second. Then I did. I lifted my left hand. On the 3rd finger, where you might expect to see a wedding ring on another kind of woman, I wear a thin, silver ring with a small, dark stone, an academy ring, scratched up from 12 years of wear. I do not wear it for show. I wear it because my best friend gave it to me at our commissioning, and 3 years later she was killed in a helicopter crash off the coast of Okinawa, and I have not taken it off since. Pierce looked at the ring. Then he looked at my face. And then something happened to his posture. His shoulders went back. His feet shifted just slightly into a kind of stillness I recognized very well. "Ma'am," he said, much quieter now. "I thought it was you. I wasn't sure. I wasn't going to embarrass you. But ma'am, with respect, you are not leaving this room." I just stared at him. "Pierce," I said, "what are you doing?" He swallowed. "My older brother is Lieutenant Commander Tobias Colton," he said. "He served under you on the Roosevelt 3 years ago. He has a photograph of you on his desk. He has spoken about you, ma'am, more times than I can count. He says you saved his crew." I closed my eyes for 1 second. Tobias Colton. I remembered him. Of course I remembered him. The North Arabian Sea, a fire in the auxiliary, a junior officer who had kept his head when 3 more senior people had lost theirs. I had recommended him for a commendation. He had written me a letter at Christmas every year since. I opened my eyes. The room had started to notice that something was happening. My father was still standing where I had left him, but his face had changed. He had not heard the words. He had seen the body language. He was a man who had spent 40 years selling commercial real estate, and he could read a room. Pierce turned to face the room. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. "Excuse me," he said. "Folks, before we sit down, I'd like to introduce someone." The murmuring stopped. Hadley was staring at me with her mouth slightly open. "This is my fiancé's older sister," Pierce said. "She drove a long way to be here tonight, and I understand there's been some confusion about whether she belongs at this table. I'd like to clear that up." I tried to catch his eye. I tried to wave him off. He did not look at me. "My brother is in the Navy," he said. "Some of you know that. He's a lieutenant commander. He's stationed in San Diego. He was supposed to be here tonight, but he's deployed." A few heads nodded. People knew. 3 years ago, my brother was serving on the USS Roosevelt. There was an engine room fire. 2 sailors were trapped. The on-scene commander made a call that saved both of those sailors and also saved the ship from a much worse situation. My brother was one of the people in that engine room. He came home because of that call. He paused. The officer who made that call, he said, is standing in this room right now. She is wearing a gray dress. She is the woman my future father-in-law just told to leave. And I want everyone here to understand, with all due respect, that she will not be leaving. She is, as a matter of fact, a rear admiral in the United States Navy, and she is my sister-in-law, and I would be honored if she would stay. There was a sound in the room that I have only ever heard one other time, and that was at a chapel service for a sailor we lost off the coast of Yemen. It is the sound of a lot of people stopping breathing at the same time. My father's face had gone the color of old paper. My stepmother had finally looked at me. Her gold cuff bracelet was shaking, just slightly, against the side of her glass. Hadley took 2 steps forward and then 3 more, and then she was running across the carpet in her blue dress with her shoes half off, and she crashed into me hard enough that I had to take a step back to catch her. "You're a what?" she whispered into my shoulder. "You're a what?" I did not answer right away. I just held my baby sister and felt her shoulders heaving against me, and over the top of her head, I looked across the room at my father. He had not moved. His mouth was slightly open. The bourbon glass was slightly open. The bourbon glass was still in his hand. I watched him try to find something to say and fail. I want to tell you that I felt triumphant in that moment. I want to tell you that I felt some kind of justice. But the truth is, I just felt tired. I felt tired in a way that went past my bones. I had not wanted this. I had spent 13 years specifically not wanting this. I had spent 13 years showing up on time, doing the work, taking the calls in the middle of the night, learning the names of every single person who served under me, writing letters to widows, sitting with parents at funerals, and not one single member of my family had ever asked me what my actual job was. Not one. Hadley had asked. Once, when she was 16, and I had told her a little, and she had told my father, and he had laughed and said, "Well, she always did need to feel important." Pierce had come up beside me. He was waiting. Hadley was still pressed against my chest. "Ma'am," he said, very quietly, "where would you like to sit?" I looked at him. I think I smiled. I do not remember. "With my sister," I said. "Wherever she is." He nodded. He turned. He walked toward the head table, and I followed him with Hadley still holding on to my arm, and as we passed my father, I did not look at him. I did not need to. I had spent 13 years not looking at him. I had gotten very good at it. The dinner itself was strange. People kept trying to catch my eye. An older woman in a navy blue dress, who I later learned was Pierce's grandmother, reached across the table and squeezed my hand and said, "My late husband was a Marine, and I am so glad to meet you, sweetheart." A man 2 seats down asked me, with the careful politeness of someone who did not want to overstep, whether I was the youngest woman to ever make Rear Admiral, and I said, "No, not by a long shot." And he laughed and said, "Well, you are still very young." And I said, "Thank you, sir, but I am not. I am 41, and he said, 'My God, you look 30. Hadley would not let go of my hand under the table. She had stopped crying, but every few minutes she would squeeze my fingers like she was checking I was still there. My father did not come over. My stepmother did not come over. They sat at a small round table near the back, and they ate, I assume. I did not look. Twice, I felt my father's eyes on the side of my face, and both times I let him look. I did not turn. Toward the end of the dinner, when the plates had been cleared and the coffee was coming around, Pierce stood up to give a small speech. He thanked his parents. He thanked Hadley's mother, who I should say is not my mother. My mother died when I was 11, and Hadley's mother was the woman my father married 6 months later, the one in the green dress, the one with the gold cuff. He thanked her and she nodded stiffly. He thanked Hadley. He told a small, sweet story about how they had met at a coffee shop near the hospital where he worked, on a Tuesday morning when neither of them was supposed to be there. He said he had known, on that Tuesday morning, that he was going to marry her. Then he stopped, and he looked at me. "There is one more person I want to thank tonight," he said. "Some of you didn't know she was coming. Some of you didn't know she existed. I didn't, until 2 weeks ago, when Hadley showed me a picture of the two of them on a beach when they were kids. Hadley told me her sister was in the Navy and that they didn't talk much. She didn't tell me anything else because she didn't know anything else." I felt Hadley's hand tighten in mine. "I want to thank her for coming," Pierre said. "I want to thank her for driving 9 hours after what I imagine is a very long week. I want to thank her for sitting through this dinner with Grace, even after she was treated in a way that no guest should ever be treated, much less a sister of the bride. And I want to say, on the record, in front of everyone here, that she is family. She was family before tonight. She will be family after tonight, and anyone who has a problem with that is welcome to take it up with me." He raised his glass. "To my sister-in-law," he said. "Ma'am." "Welcome to the family." The room raised their glasses. Most of them did anyway. My father did not. My stepmother did not. I noticed, and I did not let myself care. I raised my own glass. My hand was steady. It had not been steady. It had not been steady all evening, but it was steady then. "Thank you," I said. That was all I said. I did not give a speech. I did not need to. After the dinner ended, people came over in small groups. Pierce's grandmother again, who insisted on getting a picture with me, who said she was going to put it on her refrigerator. A cousin of Hadley's, who I had not seen since she was 4, who told me she had joined the Coast Guard 2 years ago because of something I had once said to her at a family barbecue. Something I did not remember saying. A man who introduced himself as the president of the country club and shook my hand for too long. My father waited until almost everyone else had left. He came up to me near the coat check. My stepmother was not with him. He had his car keys in his hand. He looked smaller than he had at the start of the evening, which is something I have noticed about that kind of man. They take up a lot of room when they are in control. They shrink very fast when they are not. He cleared his throat. "I didn't know," he said. I waited. "You never told us." I waited. "You should have told us," he said. There was something almost petulant in his voice. "If we had known, we would have. You should have told us." I looked at him for a long moment. I looked at his white hair and his loose jaw and his cold tea eyes, and I thought about every birthday card I had sent that had never been opened, every voicemail I had left during deployments that had never been returned. Every Christmas card with a return address from Bahrain or Yokosuka or Naples that had gone into a drawer somewhere, unread. I thought about being 14 and standing in a doorway in our old house in Charleston, telling him I wanted to go to the academy, and him laughing and pouring another drink and telling me girls did not do that. And even if they did, I did not have the discipline. I thought about being 17 and getting my acceptance letter and showing it to him at the kitchen table, and him reading it twice and then putting it down and saying, "Well, they will let anyone in these days." I thought about Hadley calling me last year, drunk, sobbing, telling me Dad had called her a disappointment for wanting to be a teacher instead of going to law school. I thought about a lot of things, very quickly. "Dad," I said, I told you when I got in. I told you when I commissioned. I told you when I made lieutenant. I told you when I made lieutenant commander. I sent you the invitation when I made commander. You did not come. I sent you the invitation when I made captain. You did not come. I called you the night I was selected for flag rank. You let it go to voicemail." He opened his mouth. I held up my hand. "You did not want to know," I said, "and that is okay. That is your right. But do not stand here tonight and tell me I should have told you. I did. You were not listening here tonight and tell me I should have told you. I did. You were not listening. That is not the same thing." He looked at the floor. For a second, I thought he was going to apologize. I really did. There was a flicker of something, some tiny human thing in his face. And then it passed, the way weather passes, and he straightened up, and he said, "Well, I'm glad you're doing well." That was it. That was what he had. "Good night, Dad," I said. I walked past him toward Hadley, who was waiting for me by the door with Pierce, her coat in her arms, her face still a little flushed from crying. She hugged me hard for a long time. She did not say anything. She did not need to. After a minute, she stepped back and held me by the shoulders and looked at me with such an expression of love that I almost lost the composure I had been holding all night. "I want to know everything," she said. "Not tonight, but soon. I want to know everything about you. I want to know my sister." I put my hand on her cheek. She leaned into it the way she used to when she was 4 and I was 12. And our mother had just died, and I had been the one to put her to bed every night for the better part of a year, before I went away to school, before everything broke. "You will," I said. "I promise, you will." Pierce drove me to my hotel. He insisted, even though it was only a few miles and I had a perfectly functional rental. He said his brother would never forgive him if he let me drive after a night like that. I let him. I was too tired to argue. In the car, he was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "I hope I didn't overstep, in there, with what I said." I looked out the window. The streetlights were making long yellow stripes across the dashboard. "You didn't overstep," I said. "I just couldn't," he said, and then he stopped. "I couldn't let him do that to you, not in front of all those people, not when I knew. My brother would have killed me." I smiled a little. "Your brother is a good officer. He says you taught him everything he knows. He was already good. I just told him to trust himself." We pulled into the hotel parking lot. He put the car in park but did not unlock the doors right away. "Ma'am," he said, "I just want you to know my family is going to love you. They already do, most of them, the ones who matter. And Hadley, she has talked about you for as long as I have known her. She has missed you for years. She didn't know how to say it. She thought you were too important. She thought you were too far away. She didn't want to be a burden." I closed my eyes. "She's not a burden," I said. "She has never been a burden." "I know," he said. "I just thought you should know what she's been thinking." I nodded. I could not speak for a second. "Thank you, Pierce," I said finally. "Thank you for tonight, and thank you for loving my sister." "Always," he said. I got out of the car. I walked into the hotel. I went up to my room. I sat on the end of the bed with my coat still on for about 10 minutes, not moving, not thinking, just sitting. Then I got up, and I took off my dress, and I hung it in the closet, and I called my XO and told her I would be in late on Monday because I had some family business to handle. The next morning, I drove over to Hadley's apartment. She made me coffee. She sat on the couch with her feet tucked under her, and I sat in the chair across from her, and I started at the beginning. I told her about the academy. I told her about my first deployment. I told her about my first deployment. I told her about Okinawa and my friend in the helicopter. I told her about the Roosevelt and Tobias Colton. I told her about the night I made flag rank, and how I had wanted, more than anything, to call our mother. I told her I was sorry I had not been around. I told her I had not known how. I told her I was going to do better. She cried a little. So did I. Around noon, she made us sandwiches, and we sat at her kitchen table, and she asked me if I wanted to walk her down the aisle. I said yes. I said yes before she finished the sentence. My father was not at the wedding. He had been told, gently, by Pierce's father, that perhaps it would be better for everyone if he sat that one out. My stepmother stayed home with him. I do not know what they did that day. I do not think about it very often. I walked my sister down the aisle in my dress whites. The whole congregation stood when we came in. Hadley held my arm and whispered, "You look so beautiful," and I whispered back, "No, you do." And we both laughed a little, the way you laugh when you are about to cry, but you have decided you will not. At the reception, Tobias Colton was there, finally back from his deployment. He hugged me and called me ma'am and would not let go for a long time. His wife cried. Their little boy, who was maybe 4, looked up at me and asked if I was a real Navy person, and I said yes. And he asked if I had a boat, and I said yes, kind of. And he said, "Can I see it sometime?" And I said, "When you are older, absolutely you can." That was almost 3 years ago now. Hadley and Pierce have a baby. a little girl. They named her after a mother. I am her godmother. My father has called me twice in those 3 years. Once to ask for money, which I did not give him. Once to tell me he had been diagnosed with something. I sent him a card. I did not visit. I do not know if that makes me a bad person. I have made my peace with not knowing. What I have come to understand, slowly, in the time since that night at the country club, is that you can spend your whole life waiting for the people who are supposed to love you to finally see you. You can earn every commendation. You can rise through every rank. You can save lives. You can lead thousands of sailors. You can stand on the bridge of a ship in the middle of a black ocean and make decisions that other people will never make in their entire lives. And the man who taught you to ride a bike will still look at you like you are a stain on a rug. That is not something you can fix. That is not a problem with you. That is a problem with him, and it was always going to be a problem with him. And there is nothing you could have done to make him into a different father. But the other thing I have come to understand is this. Sometimes, family is not the people whose blood you share. Sometimes, family is a young man in a borrowed suit who looks at you across a room, recognizes you for who you are, and refuses to let you walk out the door. Sometimes, family is a little sister who has been waiting her entire life for you to come home. Sometimes, family is the people who finally give you the seat at the table that you should have had all along. I do not brag. I have never bragged. I do not need to. I let the time brag. I do not need to. I let the time brag for me, and the time, it turns out, has had a lot to say. I have thought about that night at the Magnolia Grove a lot in the years since, and what I keep coming back to is this. My father did not become the man he was that night by accident. He became him slowly, choice by choice, over the course of 50 years, every time he chose to look past me instead of at me. Every time he chose his pride over his daughter's news. Every time he chose the easy laugh over the hard listening. Those choices added up. They became him. And when he stood in that ballroom and told me to leave, he was not making a new choice. He was just continuing one he had been making for a very long time. That is the thing I want anyone listening to remember. The way you treat the people who love you the most is who you actually are. Not the suit you wear, not the coat you wear, not the sight of the country club you can afford. The small, quiet, daily way you speak to your own daughter when no one important is watching. That is the truth about you. The rest is decoration. I also want to say something about Hadley, my baby sister, because she taught me something I did not expect. She had every reason to cut me out the same way our father had cut me out. She had every reason to be angry that I had not come home more, called more, fought harder. But she did not. She kept the door open for 13 years. She made the phone calls nobody asked her to make. She invited me to a dinner she knew might be hard. That is what I would call real strength, not the kind you put on a uniform. The kind you put on every morning when you decide, again, to love people who have not yet earned it back. And then there is Pierce, a young man I had known for 30 seconds, who recognized me from a photograph on his brother's desk, and who decided that the right thing was worth more than the comfortable thing. He did not know me. He did not owe me. He stood up anyway. There is a kind of courage that has nothing to do with being shot at. It is the courage to say the true sentence in a quiet room full of people who would rather you stay quiet. Pierce had it. Tobias had it on the Roosevelt 3 years before. It is the same thing. It just looks different on different days. What I have learned, walking the long road away from my father's table and toward my sister's, is that you do not need anyone's permission to know what you are worth. You do not need to be promoted. You do not need to be promoted. You do not need to be announced. You do not need a man in a suit to introduce you to a room. You just need to keep showing up, doing the work, being the kind of person you would be proud to walk a child down the aisle behind. Eventually, time tells the story. You do not have to.